Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, George Burns. I'll put your microphone in for you, George.
Well, here I am, 100 years old. I've never felt better, I've never ate better, and I've never slept better. And I've never made love better. And I'll tell you something else, I never lied better. Hi, everybody, how you doing? My name is George Burns, and it's nice being here with you today. Come to think of it, at my age, it's nice being anywhere. And thank you for that standing ovation. But it made me nervous. As a rule, an entertainer doesn't get a standing ovation until the end of the show. I'll bet you thought I wasn't going to be around that long, huh? I went to my doctor's last week. I said, "Doctor, every morning at 7 o'clock I pee. Every morning at 8 o'clock I poop just like clockwork." He said, "Well, what's wrong with that, George?" I says, "I don't get out of bed till 9 o'clock. Hey, I had dinner last week with Carol Channing. She said, "George, do you mind if I ask you a personal question?" She said, "Do you take Viagra?" I says, "As a matter of fact, Carol, I take a half a pill every day after breakfast." She said, "George, does it help?" I said, "It stops me from peeing on my shoes." Oh, George, you naughty boy. Hey, I remember the first girl I ever took out. She was a seamstress from Philadelphia. Her name was Betsy Ross. Does everybody remember Gracie? Thank you. Yeah, she was one of the nicest people you'd ever want to meet. Except sometimes she used to act a little strange. Like the time we drove up to Niagara Falls on our honeymoon. Gracie did all the driving back then, and when we got there, she stopped the car, leaned over and put her hand on my knee. I said, "Gracie, you can go further than that if you want to. We're married now." So she drove all the way up into Canada. I can't understand. You don't mind if I laugh at my own jokes, do you? Ladies, I got a confession to make. Well, I cheated on Gracie once. But let me tell you what happened. I was in the kitchen one morning drinking a cup of coffee, and Gracie walks up behind me and smacked me on the back of the head. I said, "Gracie, what did you do that for?" She said, "George Burns, I found a piece of paper upstairs with the name Lucille on it." She says, "You better have a good excuse." I said, "Gracie, don't you remember yesterday I went to the racetrack? And the name of the horse I bet on was Lucille." Later on that evening, I was drinking a warm glass of milk before I went to bed. Gracie walked up behind me again and smacked me on the head. I said, "Gracie, what did you do that for?" She says, "Your horse just called you on the telephone." You know, most people don't know it, but I still play golf. In fact, I was out on the golf course last week, and somebody asked me what my score was. I said 94. They said, "Well, that's not bad for you, George." I said, "I know, but I expect to do much better when I get to the second hole." Hey, I was playing with a couple of friends last week, and I hit the ball. It was parallel with the main street, the golf course. I hit the ball and went over the fence, bounced down the street, hit the tire of a moving bus, ricocheted back over on the golf course, and rolled up 1 foot short of the cup. Everybody ran over. They said, "How'd you do that, George?" Well, I had to think fast. I said, "Well, you have to know the bus schedule." He was supposed to hit the drum on that one. I think he missed. You know, one of the members at our country club died suddenly of a heart attack. And nobody knew how to break the news to his wife. Finally, a doctor volunteered. He got on the telephone. He said, "Mrs. Goldberg, your husband just lost $2,000 here at the club playing cards." Mrs. Goldberg said he should drop dead. Doctor says he did. Has anybody here ever been to Buckingham Palace? Well, you know them guys that stand guard with the fuzzy hats? Well, they never move a muscle. Well, I was there one time and one of them flinched. The captain ran over to him and said, "Why did you flinch?" He said, "Sir, I was looking straight ahead at that tree. A squirrel come out, ran over, went up my right pants leg into my underwear." The guard said, "Then another squirrel come out, ran across the street, went up my left pants leg into my underwear." The captain said, "Is that when you flinched?" He said, "No, sir. I flinched when I heard one squirrel whisper to the other squirrel, 'Let's eat one now and we'll bury the other one for later.'" You know, the Queen was showing me around the royal stables. All of a sudden, one of the stallions broke wind. It was so loud you couldn't ignore it. The Queen turned around to me and said, "I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Burns." I said, "That's quite all right, Your Majesty. Actually, I thought it was the horse." Hey, I went back to my dressing room the other night after the show, and there was a beautiful young lady in there. And I says to her, "What are you doing in my dressing room?" She said, "George Burns, I'm here to give you super sex." I says, "At my age, I'll take the soup." I had you worried on that one, didn't I, ladies? You know the young girls like to run their fingers through my hair? I peeked in my dressing room the other night and caught them. Jack Benny was my best friend. And I remember me and Jack were supposed to do a show at the White House. Well, when we got up to the front gate, the guard stopped Jack. He said, "Excuse me, but would you mind telling me what you have in that case?" And Jack says to him sarcastically, "A machine gun." The guard said, "Thank God, Mr. Benny. For a minute we thought you brought your violin with you." People ask me if Jack was really a cheapskate. Well, Jack went into a tobacco shop one time, went up to the counter and said to the clerk, "How much are your cigars?" The clerk said, "They're 2 for 15 cents. Now, 15 cents was a lot of money back then. So Jack says, "Well, how much is one cigar?" The clerk said, 10 cents. Jack says, "Okay, I'll take the other one." And now, ladies, I'd like to tell you my favorite story. It's about an old lady, and she lived alone with her old cat. One day, she went up in the attic to look over some of her old treasures. and she came upon an old tarnished lamp. She got a rag out and she started to shine it up. And a genie jumped out. He said, "Lady, this is your lucky day. You can have any 2 wishes you want." She says, "I wish I was young and beautiful like I was when I was 20. And she became young and beautiful. The genie says, "You got 1 more wish, lady." She says, "I wish you could turn my old cat into a young, handsome prince, and he could be my lover." Well, the old cat turned into a young, handsome prince. He walked up to the beautiful young lady, put his arms around her, and gave her a kiss on the lips. Then he leaned forward and he whispered in her ears, "Now ain't you sorry you had me neutered?" That was a double drum roll. How about that, kid? You know, most people don't know it, but I was a soldier in World War I. And our company commander's name was Colonel Johnson. And nobody liked him. Behind his back, we called him Fat Ass Johnson. I was sitting at the desk one day and the telephone rang. I picked it up and this voice said, "How many vehicles do we have available today?" I looked at my clipboard. I said 4 Jeeps, 3 tanks, and Fat Ass Johnson's command car. The voice said, "Do you know who you're talking to, soldier?" I said, "No, sir." He said, "This is Colonel Johnson." I said, "Do you know who you're talking to?" He said, "No." I said, "Goodbye, fat ass." Well, now that I got everybody here all whipped up into a wild frenzy, it's almost time for me to leave. But before I go, there's one more thing I'd like to say. You know, folks, I've had just about everything a man could want in life. I've had good health, a lovely wife, Gracie, and warm, beautiful audiences like yourselves. But you know, there is one other thing I wish for, and if I may, I'd like to sing it for you. In my key, please. I wish I was 18 again and going where I've never been. And old folks and old oaks standing tall just pretend. I wish I was 18 again. Now time turns the pages and old life goes so fast. The years turn the black hairs all gray. I've talked to some young folks, hey, they don't understand the words this old man's got to say. I wish I was 18 again and going where I've never been. And old folks and old oaks standing tall just pretend. I wish I was 18 again. Lord, I wish I was 18 again. Thank you. You've been a wonderful, wonderful audience.
Don't you realize we're living today? I'm happy to
Ladies
say,
and gentlemen,
in the good old
Al,
bad old days.
George Burns, Long. Isn't he wonderful?